What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch with a huge news roundup. There's a Q&A with the Overwatch 2 lead hero designer on BroYouWack's channel talking about Season 4 reworks and the philosophy they take to making changes to the characters. Aaron Keller had a dev update blog talking about matchmaking issues and ways they seemingly broke the matchmaker in Season 3 and are now continuing to fix it. The commercial lead for Overwatch 2, the guy who was in charge of free-to-play essentially, Jon Spector, leaves Blizzard after 6 years. What? Let's get on to the hero changes. We already knew that a bigger Roadhog rework is down the line, but talking about him as well as Sombra, Alec Dawson says they want to keep the hero's identity, but maybe solve pain points in the game. With Hog, it was the brutality of the one-shot, but obviously the chain hook CC is sort of the fantasy of Roadhog, right? In Sombra's case, she's a hacker character, and I was very excited to hear that they're looking at permanent stealth, and even the way that Translocator works currently. And perhaps there's even design space to give her a different ability that still debuffs the enemy with the hacker archetype. He said they don't want to nerf her or make her less fun to play, but in general in Season 4, and so far they have done in Season 3 actually, is look at a lot of the quality of life things as opposed to just pure balance. And that's sort of the theme for the rest of these changes that are coming up soon as well. Cassidy is a character that has got a lot of conversation recently. From the player's perspective, the Cassidy player lost some of the synergy between Flashbang and Fan the Hammer, which we might say was super lame, but at least their abilities like rolled into one another. Now Magnetic Grenade is more so used to chase a target who's running away as opposed to setting yourself up for extra damage. So he says they might look to improve the flow of the kit. Not sure how that would happen without just it being a stun, but we'll see. On the receiving end of Magnade, they admit it probably does too much damage and follows you too far. So they want to lower the frustration level versus it. He does admit as well that if a rework is too substantial, they probably should use those resources to just make a new character. But I feel like Alec Dawson is at a bit of a rock and hard place with this because he inherited the route that the dev team was on from the previous administration, so to speak. So they kind of have to decide some of these things like, you know, permanent stealth with Sombra. Let's make a final change that we like the design of it and then tune it. Because tuning is easier than redesign. But as he goes to say, redesign is like a bigger, stronger tool that will make a more impactful gameplay change, such as like a rework to Roadhog. Like maybe Hog needing to one-shot is just lame and bad. And we can do more interesting things. But that takes more dev time and work. So they try to limit how much they do that because they need to make new heroes. That's the main thing and appeal to the game, of course. Talking about Mercy. From the player's point of view, the healing is strong and feels impactful, but feels impossible to play against, of course, since a lot of heroes just cannot kill a target that a Mercy's on. I'm not sure if he's falling on that will change or not really sure, but he does out and out say that in Overwatch 2, they gave her a bit too much mobility with all of the freedom of movement with the movement rework, as opposed to Overwatch 1, where it was a bit predetermined the techs you could do, which is the reason why it got nerfed a bit in the first place. But longtime Mercy players, of course, aren't a fan of the Guardian Angel cooldown being so long now. So long that even when you fly in to do a res, the animation finishes and you don't have GA again to get out. So you're like a sitting duck. Yikes. On the show, it gets suggested perhaps a cooldown reset after res so you can escape, keeping the cooldown the same for normal interactions, but giving you a chance to escape when you res. Alex says that's the type of thing they're looking at. So either that specifically or another way to allow her to have more ability to escape. He does say that the Valkyrie regen boost being removed in this recent iteration was an oversight, and they may bring it back in Season 4. I would assume the reason why he's hesitant on that is because, remember, you already get a ton of self-healing with the new passive anyway. So if you self-regen also boosted, it would be like Valk was not killable ever in any circumstance. Because if you have chain healing, you're getting 25% off all of the healing you're doing. Valk healing is even more than normal healing. And even when you're not, having boosted self-regen, that would just be kind of nuts. For Mei, they're looking at her slow, because although she won't get the full freeze effect from Overwatch 1, it's not as interesting to use now. So instead, it sounds like they're going to have the freeze do a timed debuff. So let's say you hit the target with the freeze, and for a few seconds, they're going to be slowed. allowing you an opportunity to switch to your alternate icicle fire from range and maybe line up some headshots, as opposed to needing to just hose somebody down and keep slowing them forever. That's not like very fun for the Mei player. Not fun for anybody, honestly. I'm not so sure being perma-slowed by 100 ammo of Mei freeze is any better than getting fully frozen like you did in Overwatch 1. It's like kind of the same to me. And in some instances worse, because at least in Overwatch 1, the damage was really bad on that. So certain characters could just tank it and not really care. There was an interesting section where he talked about the perception and reality on some heroes. This is always a type of conversation I love to have. He brings up heroes like Roadhog, Kiriko, and Sojourn, where the reality of Roadhog's performance was lower than people thought in Season 2, but the perception was that he was insane. And that mainly is because they buffed Orisa to counter him. So you could force Hog to swap, but that's not really the point. It's not about whether it wins or not. It's like, why do I have to play a certain thing to hard counter another thing just to have a chance to lower its win rate, right? It's not about necessarily the win rate effectiveness. It's about the damage onto the gameplay and what you're forced to be picking in order to even compete against it. So this is why they're kind of trying to find mechanics or reworks that can improve the playability of an interaction rather than simply push the numbers up and down, which is music to my ears. Another interesting dichotomy between perception and reality is Kiriko, who is an incredibly popular hero, but has a weak win rate at every rank right now. And I feel kind of happy about this because this is one of those that you get a lot of flack being the first person to come out and say, oh, this hero everybody thinks is good is a lot weaker than you think. No one believes it, but it makes me feel some validation because the devs actually now produce the win rate numbers when they used to never do that. And we just had to make these claims with no evidence to back them up. But turns out when you keep nerfing a character, they're going to perform worse. And now I even would say you kind of need to be a Kiriko specialist to properly use her. She doesn't just solve the game like she did in the more overpowered versions, but still a popular hero because she kind of softens some of the rough edges of some matchups. But the throughput isn't necessarily there in comparison to other supports, I feel. And I think the win rate stats back that up. Alec Dawson's solution to this is, well, they just have to make more support heroes, which they are doing, right? They're looking to balance out the support roster. More ways to interact with the game, more options. You're not expecting less heroes to do more in order to keep things playable and fun. And the last one on the perception versus reality thing is Sojourn, who's finally catching up to the reality of where her power really is. Personally, whenever they made the rail headshot too forgiving, I kind of lost interest in the character because she was good for like the wrong reasons, and she kind of had an era of being kind of spammy and lame, but still too hard for most players. So it's kind of tough when you have a basically just skill shot character, because let's say in comparison to a character like Junker Queen, who has quite a few skill shots you really do have to land, there's also a lot of abilities that you can use to smooth out her gameplay loop. I just think Sojourn was like a design nightmare for them, or perhaps even a balanced nightmare. I don't know, some kind of nightmare. Aaron Keller's developer update expanded on the matchmaking issues. He essentially explained that matchmaking was fully broke because they lost their ability to adjust the individual playlists somehow, which is why the arcade playlist queue times got really bad, because they had to adjust the numbers of the tolerance of MMR difference within a match across the board. So it meant that if they want to tighten that for competitive play, they also were tightening the restrictions on arcade, which is why the queue times got super long, because the population isn't as big, which is also why it exacerbated the grouping problem, because you and your friends might have wide MMR to begin with, and then it's trying to find like a perfect match for you in modes that aren't competitive anyway. So that's why that all happened. It looks like they have regained control of the reins on this one, but kind of just reset the tolerance back to what it was at the start of the season, and they're still looking to improve it. I don't know if the matchmaker was ever beloved in any of these seasons, but at least they've undone some of the recent mistakes and problems that they've had. Remember, early access game, a lot of problems at once. Good luck to all of you out there, and may the matchmaking gods shine brightly upon you. Last news story for the day. Jon Spector tweets out, after 6 amazing years, I've decided to hang up my sword and I'm leaving Blizzard at the end of March. Working on Overwatch has been the highlight of my career. Team 4 brings immense talent and passion to their work every day. Thank you to everyone at Blizzard who made this chapter of my career so incredible, and thank you to the Overwatch community too. I'll still be around, memeing on Twitter replies and posting DPS Moira highlights. There are so many exciting things coming to Overwatch that I can't wait to see as a player. I've worked closely with the rest of the leadership team on this transition, and I know the franchise is in great hands with Aaron Keller and Jared, the game director and producer, respectively, and the rest of the team. So here's the thing. You can say a lot of negative things about Overwatch 2. The success of free-to-play is kind of not disputable. Like, you can say the skins cost too much from the consumer point of view, but from the business point of view, One Punch Man collaboration and expensive skins has worked great for them. And so I don't know if this is similar to other Blizzard departures we have seen throughout Overwatch and the years, where sometimes someone feels like they've reached their milestone, turned the corner on an idea, and ready to pass the reins on. Or we do know that there's been some really odd Activision work from home policies that are sort of forcing devs to go into the office, I believe, like half the week. I don't know if that's in play here. Perhaps a better job offer somewhere else after this success, but I don't think this is like a leaving in shame type moment in any way. And realistically speaking, I don't even suspect it will change anything because the plan Jon Spector set out worked, and they're likely just to reproduce it down the line anyway. And of course, previously to this point, Jon Spector was in charge of turning the ship around a bit with the Overwatch League as well, which pushed it in a different direction that they continued down even when he changed jobs. So interesting where this guy ends up. He had quite a difficult and unenviable job on his hands to try to make Overwatch 2 have a pipeline of resources that allowed for development for years to come, and I think he accomplished it based on the numbers that have been reported so far. But if there's any drama behind the scenes on this, you all know where my Twitter DMs are at. That's it for today's video, guys. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to leave the video with a like, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.